For the second night in a row, police in Philadelphia arresting dozens of teenagers for violating a curfew. The mayor earlier called for kids under 18 to be off the streets by 9 p.m. in some downtown neighborhoods. That's following a series of violent mob attacks that have been plaguing the city. But the curfew is sparking some controversy. That's because critics question its viability, and they wonder if it's prejudicial because it only applies to some parts of the city. That seems to be the controversy there. So let's bring in our power panel. Judy Miller, an investigative reporter, Deneen Borelli, a Project 21 fellow columnist for the Daily Caller, and Ellen Ratner, bureau chief of Talk Radio News Service, and all three are Fox News contributors. Thanks for joining us on this rainy Saturday out there. So what do we think? I mean, I guess at issue here in Philadelphia is whether you can apply this curfew to certain areas in their city. It's the center city and university area, and not all areas.
Of course you can. I mean, you have to apply these kinds of extraordinary measures where the problem is. It's the same kind of controversy we've had in New York about the stop and frisk policies. Do you stop and frisk everyone, or do you stop and frisk people in high crime areas? I think Mayor Nutter should be saluted for his very no-nonsense approach to what could be a very serious situation. He's trying to stop this right away.
Well, here's something, though, that happened, and this just came in, I guess, last night or this past weekend, which was the first weekend that this went into effect. There was an event that they held at a bowling alley, and which was outside the areas of the curfew, and there was a stabbing. So does that not speak to the need to have it maybe in other areas?
I think it should be in all areas, and I think it should take some lessons from Washington, D.C., who, as you remember, in the late 60s had a lot of problems, and now they have a jobs program for kids in the summer. Pretty much anybody in Washington, D.C. can be part of that jobs program. They don't have these kind of problems.
Let me say this. I give Mayor Nutter credit for speaking out against this, because this is outrageous, deplorable behavior by these young black individuals. Where is Jesse Jackson? He's been silent. And where is Al Sharpton? They're supposed to be the leaders of the black community, and we've heard nothing from them. So we need more black leaders to take on these issues when they come up. But this is about personal responsibility. I don't agree with the curfew, because bringing in a police state is a slippery slope. Personal responsibility, and where are the parents for these kids?
And then there's a whole question of funding as well. When the city is already strapped for cash, how do they fund this?
Well, but the point is, again, that's why Washington, D.C. has been such a model, because they've been able to get these kids engaged. And this all happened after the riots in the late 60s. And now the kids learn some responsibility. I mean, maybe they need a Job Corps program for kids.
Well, I know that we want to continue on this topic, but let's get one more topic in before we go to break. A federal judge giving the okay for an atheist group to advertise on public buses in Arkansas. Well, the ads weren't banned, but the transit authority, the ad agency, they tried to make up the difference, or they tried to make the group pay a $3 million insurance policy before letting them put the ads up in case the buses got damaged. So what do we think about this?
This is a victory for free speech. This group, no matter what you think about its message, has a right to put its message out there in the public if it's going to pay for it. And it shouldn't be asked to pay an exorbitant amount of money for the right to speak.
It ended up being about $36,000 that they had to pay.
Well, I'm all for freedom of speech, and they do have their right to put up the ads. I don't agree with their message. However, with the insurance policy, there have been buses that have been vandalized already. So really, the bus company is protecting themselves.
But they did make
the other thing is, were there other political groups or Christian groups or any other kind of controversial groups that everybody doesn't sort of agree with, that it isn't, you know, go to the Ace Hardware or whatever. And
but
so
there's a record of their message promoting violence or vandalism on the buses.
4 out of 36.
But it happens, so they're trying to protect their property.
But does that
Otherwise,
mean we shut down free speech if you don't agree with the message by charging something that's so high?
But they can
the
still
discussion
do the
will continue when we come up after the break, and we're going to talk about some new things. Kids finding a new way to read by relying on Fido. An amazing study shows why dogs aren't just your best friend. Well, dogs have a new trick. A study finds that kids who read to man's best friend, they actually improve their reading skills over kids who read to people? Let's bring back our panel, Judy Miller, Deneen Borelli, and Ellen Ratner. So apparently this study holds true that kids in the summertime, if they read to their dog, they stick to it more, I think is where the difference is. And so they increase their reading skills.
Probably the dogs are not critical, and they're not saying, oh, well, you're not doing this fast enough, or you're not doing enough. The dogs are there, and they're sweet, and they're available, and so the kids want to read to them.
Well, I looked into this a little more, and one of the things that came out with the study is that kids suffer. Some of these kids had performance anxiety, so they were very concerned about reading before their family or their friends, and so dogs and cats are therapeutic with hospitals and nursing homes. That's something that we pretty much already know already. One thing I would have preferred is that they had used private funding for this instead of tax dollars.
Well, absolutely. I thought the same thing, and by the way, I hope they're not reading to my dog because I can't get him to listen to anything.
Yeah.
But this is exactly the kind of study that the right says, oh, we shouldn't be using tax dollars for. You see it in the Pink Pig book. But no, I do think the tax dollars ought to be used for that, because if it gets our kids reading, all the more power to it.
It's kind of like the shrimp running on the treadmill study that tax dollars paid for that we've seen.
Ellen, with so many needs and so little money, would you really spend a lot of money on this?
I don't think a lot of money was
resources.
spent, but I have to say that anything that improves the education and reading ability of our nation, I'm in favor of.
I am too, but I don't think we have to spend public money documenting it.
Okay, speaking of money, we have one more topic. He is responsible for an international crime spree that includes stolen planes, stolen boats, and now the so-called barefoot bandit. Remember him? Well, he signed a $1.3 million movie deal, almost as much as he owes in restitution for his crimes. We should note that the deal's with 20th Century Fox, which is owned by the parent company of Fox News Channel. Now, the money allegedly going to the victims, correct?
Yes, it is. And in fact, I was very touched by what he said. This is a young man who seems to have had a real conversion, because he said he's looking forward to giving this restitution, to giving this money to the people he harmed. That's a good thing.
But is he really earning it? I mean, he's benefiting from this now.
Here's my concern, are copycat people who are going to take on the same tact and try to get out there and try to make the same deal. I think this is rewarding bad behavior. That's what how I see it.
I think the most important thing is to stop the behavior. I don't believe in all this punishment stuff. I really don't. I believe you want to stop the behavior, you want to reimburse the people that you've harmed, and you want to make sure he doesn't do it again.
But he's not paying them back, though.
But his story, his life is paying him back. It's the kind of Son of Sam loss. He's not benefiting from it.
Right.
I think this sends a bad message to others.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it. Some interesting topics, as always.
Thank you.
Again on this rainy Sunday. But have a great week. Thank you.
You too.
Rick?
Thank you, ladies.